So later on, what happened? One of the theories to why it was named that way, they say because when the Portuguese first set foot inside of the old Medina of Casablanca, so that was Casablanca during the day, they found that all the houses inside were painted in white. So they say that's why it was called Casablanca. Blanca, the white. 1978, that was done by a historian during that time who was called Leon L'Africain of Casablanca after it was bombarded by the Portuguese. So to kind of give you a longer history outline of Casablanca. So there was the Casablanca from the 7th century BC, where it was a small fisherman village, where the original name of the city was actually Anfa. That was a Berber or Amazigh name that used to mean a little hill. And then later on, it stayed that way all the way to 1468. And during that time, the Portuguese actually came to the city because the city became more like a pirate hub. So they came to the city to kind of hit two birds with one stone, to get rid of the pirates and to use the city as a portal village. Because during that time was when the Portuguese pioneered the spice trade that went around Africa all the way to India. And whenever their boats went across Casablanca, the pirates would attack the boats. So they came in and they bombarded the city in 1468. And they were actually the ones who named the city Casablanca. So later on, what happened? One of the theories to why it was named that way, they say because when the Portuguese first set foot inside of the old Medina of Casablanca, so that was Casablanca during the day, they found that all the houses inside were painted in white. So they say that's why it was called Casablanca. Blanca, the White House. So the White House. So that's one theory. Another theory, they say because Casablanca was hilly, so there was most likely a white house on top of a hill. So the Portuguese, it was easily seen from the ships. So the Portuguese used to say, we're sailing towards Casablanca. That's another theory. There are plenty of other legends and theories to why or how we got that name, but these are the most logical ones, I would say. All right, let's walk around. You can see the pictures. If you got any question about anything, just let me know. Oh, this picture here, this is kind of an interesting one as well because it shows the outside of the old Medina, or what was Casablanca, before the French started building outside. So this is before cars. This is where people still used the camel caravans to export the goods between cities. And Casablanca was always a crossroad between the north and the south. And those were the two main big cities because they used to be capitals throughout history. So Casablanca was the crossroads where all the merchants met in the middle to kind of exchange all the goods. And this is the outside of the old Medina. This is where we entered. And there was actually still nothing out here. There's probably a picture from 1905. Things like that. This is the fortress, and this is the King Muhammad III.
This is we are waiting for camel number one.
Yeah, United Nations is on this side. You just arrived. Yeah. This is an interesting one here. So this is a map of Casablanca before it grew to be really big now. So this is actually the original outline of the old Medina. And outside, if you read a little bit of French, so there's jardin, gardens. They call them gardens, but actually more like than gardens everywhere. There are actually two things actually before we carry on. So we're going to see the Christian, what used to be the Christian Catholic Church, the Jewish synagogue in Casablanca. One thing you'll always notice whenever you go to a Moroccan city is that you will always notice that there were always Jewish people and Muslim people in every city. And not just about the synagogues and the people themselves. There's, so for example, in the old Medina, there used to be a Jewish quarter, and then the Muslim neighborhoods. And there used to be a Jewish synagogue and a mosque, and also a Muslim cemetery and a Jewish cemetery. And that's what you'll find every time you go to every Moroccan old city. So under the shadow of what's happening today, you never hear about this type of history. It was more like covered up to kind of the conflict is going on around where people are dying. Because a lot of people, when they see, especially what's happening in the politics and all over the news, they think the conflict is more of a historical conflict, but it was actually not. It's more of a very recent one that only started during the start of Zionism. But in the older days, you'll find that a lot of Muslim people lived in with the Jews in what was called the Muslim Caliphates. So it was in Morocco, in the Ottoman Empire, the Persian Empire, and all over. The movie Casablanca, of course, for a lot of people who are big fans of the movie.
Oh, yes.
It's the only people who come to Casablanca specifically to visit Casablanca. As for most people, it's because it has the main airport to kind of connect everything else. And everybody who's going from the south to the north or north to south, they're coming through Casablanca. But for people who visit the city, specifically to see the city, is to go to Rex Cafe from the movie Casablanca to kind of get how it looks like on our house. Rex Cafe is going to be one of our stops, so don't worry. It's going to be on the way. This year is a section also dedicated to Jewish history in Morocco and also in Casablanca in the Old Medina. And you can see we have some of the historical Torahs as well that were written on leather. Take your time, no need to rush.
No, we have the thing now. If everybody, because the young kids, they're trying to fight for, but history is part of our lives. To
Yeah,
learn about
that's
it,
why people learn about history, to not make the same mistakes at least.
So you cannot erase it at the moment
Yeah.
in South Africa. The thing is, we must erase everything.
Hmm.
We know bad things happened. Yes, we understand it. We're already changing it. Don't try and erase it.
Yeah,
And,
and you can see that everywhere, really, to be honest, throughout history. We found, for example, a lot of the French people actually here in Morocco, because we like the Art Deco, the colonial buildings. They very well was bad history for us, but we keep them and we consider them now historical buildings.
Yes.
But when you go back to France, even there are some areas where there are Soviet buildings, Nazi buildings, but they're completely removed because they're part of the bad history. So it depends on the emotion that people have during that time, so as to kind of remove it or leave it. But as part of history, I believe it should always stay, and then people to kind of learn how to live with each other. The next generations, maybe it's going to be hard for the generations where it's their time when it happened and their parents, but later, little by little, will start to change because we don't feel bad about, let's just say, the Portuguese and Moroccan conflict in like 1700s or 1400s. But now only people think about it a little bit is the French colonial, because it was as recent as in 1956. But after that, it was going to take a little bit of time for people to heal from the wounds of the memories.
The train and the tram.
Oh, the trams, yeah. The trams. So there are going to be more trains and more trams by 2030. Because, guys, if you didn't know one thing, is that we're going to be hosting the Football World Cup for 2030 between us, Spain, and Portugal. So cool. After the Football World Cup of 2026, that's going to be a joint host between Mexico, the States, and Canada. The one after it will be in Morocco, Spain, and Portugal.
That is so exciting.
So there will be plenty more trains and plenty more trams. So now there is a project actually that just started that's going to go from Casablanca to Marrakesh and also from Casablanca to Agadir. So that's more trains. Now in Casablanca there are 2 tram lines, the green one, the orange one, and the yellow one, so T1 and T2. By the end of 2030 there will be 6 tram lines. So it will be well connected all around the city. So you will be able to take a tram from, I think, the mosque to downtown, from downtown to the New Medina Habous area. It's more of a cultural area as well. All right, so
you can tell a story of in the old days when we were here.
There was still no
trams.
trams.
Come back off. Oh no, now you
no, everything changed. And I think probably the final will be hosted in Casablanca. So you guys have to visit me again. The AFCON will be hosted here as well. So we're going to host the African Cup 2025 and then the World Cup in 2030. So 5 apart. And the thing is, I think also we're going to host the final for the Football World Cup because they're building a bigger stadium in the city. It's going to be 120,000 people. So I'm still not sure if they really gave us the final or not yet, but hopefully we're going to get it to host it. Everybody will come here. Yeah. So we came here as a stop during the tour, not because it's a part of the longer history of Casablanca, but it's part of the big culture in Morocco, which is the football culture. Especially because of what happened during the Football World Cup. A lot of people know or think that it only became popular in Morocco after we kind of became the underdog in the Football World Cup and we reached the semifinals. But it was way before that. We're always more of a football country. And here, the reason why there is this street art that the ultras do for every neighborhood, this is because the old Medina is where the first football team was created in Morocco. And originally it was created during the French colonial era as a swimming club in 1936. But later on, because during that days, it was swimming that was the most popular sport, so not football. And later on, they started adding other teams to the club. And one of the teams was the football team back in 1937. That's why they have it as 1937. And one of the reasons why football became really popular in Morocco during those times is because for most of the times during that colonial period, all of those teams for those sports would play against the French, but the team that won most of the games against the French was the football team. So it was our good team. You can you can still see this trend all over the world now. If a country's team is really good, football will be popular there. If a country's team is not so good, the other sports will be competing for the spotlight. And that's how it usually goes. South Africa as well. It's
I've
good.
got one more question. Have you been told that Marrakesh, especially, looks like Tanzania? The
No.
style of, I'm telling you,
Never.
it's a
I have to go
Muslim
visit
country.
Tanzania now.
It's
Yeah, I know it.
beautiful, But you can see it like this is part of the island. But yes, uh, Tanzania, the buildings in Marrakesh, it's like a
Is it the traditional buildings in Marrakesh or
looks yes
like
looks
the rammed earth
Tanzania.
buildings? Okay, I see.
Very
I have to look that up. I'm gonna look that up and send you like some pictures and see if I see the similarities.
There was another South African on the trip with me who said to me, Juliet, did you know? I said, my word, Tanzania. I said, yes.
It kind of makes sense because if it's historical architecture, it's architecture based in Africa. So it adheres to the culture and also the weather conditions in the continent. So that's how it usually, yeah. So this is the house that was built during the colonial period, but this is also where the team was created. So this is where the first football team was created in Morocco. But this is not in the traditional style of architecture. It's more of like colonial style of architecture, a mixture between the Spanish and the locals. All right, let's carry on. If you have any questions in between the historical stops, just let me know. There are no taboo questions, guys. Welcoming all questions. Now you're scared.